We're going to have a couple different segments today. We're going to talk about a couple different things, but my whole goal today is to learn more about yourself, how Universal Flooring got started, where you guys have been, and where you guys are going to go. So if you could quickly introduce yourself so we know who you are.
Sure. I'm Jordan Teed. I'm president and CEO of Universal Flooring. We're a family business. We've been around since 1997. It was founded by my mom and dad, and then I took it over in 2013. And we specialize in commercial flooring, commercial ceramic tile, concrete finishing and floor prep and wall protection. So we're a sub-trade to a lot of major general contractors. We work with developers and we work with end users, supplying and installing all those various products.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that.
Anytime.
I love the flooring industry.
Yeah. I know the spiel. I've done it a few times. Yeah.
Definitely. You've. I know when we were talking before the session, you said you started in this when you were 10 is when your parents started the business.
Yeah, when I was 10 or 11, they started the business, and by 10 or 11 and a half, I was working in the business, I think, yeah.
So you've been in the industry for quite some time.
Yeah, I've been in the industry for quite some time, yeah.
Before we jump back and time travel back to when the business started, I want to focus just in the last year, 2025.
Sure.
Let's talk about what happened in the business. Can you tell us of any unique trends that happened, any big projects? How was 2025 for Universal Flooring?
I think 2025 for us was very similar to what it was for a lot of businesses and a lot of industries in Alberta. You know, construction's fun and unique in the sense that it follows the trends that are sort of more active in the broader world. So, you know, a lot of people moved to Alberta and to Calgary last year, and so there's a need for housing, there's a need for schools, there's a need for infrastructure, and so we get to be involved in the projects that are fulfilling that need. So we've done a lot of multifamily projects, you know, building homes for people in condos and apartments. We've done some healthcare and education work, so building schools or improving hospitals for all the people that have come here. And so, you know, all of those projects come with unique challenges and, you know, various complexity, but that's where we've seen a lot of our business over the last year.
All that commercial stuff, very multifamily. You know, funny enough, actually,
Yeah.
I was part of my condo board's group who picked our new carpet for our condo.
And how did that go? Was that a good process?
Well, there were some thoughts about the final carpet choice.
Okay.
I liked the carpet.
Yeah.
Some of the older residents did not.
Right. So we had a bit of a generational gap as it relates to the carpet. Yeah, we see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can help with that. We're very good at bringing the generations together to come, you know, and come together on a selection of a carpet that makes everybody feel good. So, you know, next time you do it, let us know. We'll help you out.
Well, that might be like in 3 weeks.
Well,
depending on how
we're
everybody
here.
else
We're
votes.
available even in 3 weeks. Yeah, give us a call.
You know, it's so interesting that you say that because when you think, you know, I will say this, you know, a little facetiously, but the carpet industry and the flooring industry is not necessarily the most exciting industry, or one wouldn't think it would be the most exciting industry.
Yeah.
But when you actually get into it, there's a lot more to it than an individual realizes, right? Like even just, for example, different types of carpet for different environment or different types of flooring for different environment. You know, carpet is great in a space like this where we need sound dampening, but probably not really good in a hospital.
No question. That's right. Yeah. Well, and not only that, but even in a particular scenario, say a commercial kitchen or in a hospital, there's multiple different types of products that might apply. And so it depends on what you're looking to do with that space or what the functionality is or what the safety requirements are or, you know, who's going to be using it and for what purpose. And so that's where getting sort of down into the nitty gritty, the not so exciting stuff, as you so elegantly put it, becomes really important. And so for us, you know, we understand these products, we understand their uses. And then there's other key people that are involved in our broader industry, interior designers and architects and contractors that apply context and help make sure that the right thing gets in the right spot.
It's quite the process.
It's quite the process.
On that note, can you talk about what was your most complex or advanced project or one project you are very proud that your team did in 2025?
There's lots that come to mind. I think when we talk about complexity, there's a variety of things that we can talk through. I mean, one complexity that we often see is the compression of schedule. In that way comes to mind for me in terms of we did a job at the University of Calgary and it was a big residence and it was intended to be done over 2 or 3 months and all of a sudden we had like 6 weeks or something like that to get it done. And, you know, it meant pulling together and making sure that we had material available and we had labor and crews available and making sure that everything was exactly where it needed to be when it needed to be there. So from a logistics and scheduling perspective, that's complex. And then, you know, another one that would come to mind is we did a distillery earlier in the year, and it was technically in design very complex. So there was tile that had to be custom cut and that was interwoven one tile to the next, and interplayed with hardwood and various other finishes. And that stuff is exciting because it's not the kind of work we get to do every day. It really makes you think through the job when you're figuring out how much material to order or what person to put on that job in terms of managing it or installing it. And so those types of projects are certainly a little more complex than your average office space, but it's the kind of stuff that we like to do because it's interesting and it's exciting.
That does actually sound very exciting.
Thank you. See, I can make you fall in love with flooring. This is exciting.
You know, I'm just thinking about like when I went to Europe for the first time, I went to Italy and seeing all the beautiful mosaics, you know, these ancient mosaics. And I'm like, wow, you know, the technology that we have nowadays versus the technology they had back then, and they created these beautiful mosaics. And it sounds like with this project that you did in the distillery, some of that artistic endeavor and some of that creative endeavor started to come out.
Yeah, no question. And so a lot of our installers, ceramic installers or hardwood installers, they're like artists, right? And you know, we're doing a school right now, and the main corridor, the main entrance of the school is 70 or 80 feet long, and the entire thing is this intricate indigenous design with 7 or 8 or 10 different colors sort of overlapping in sheet vinyl, and it's going to be incredible when it's finished. Just a really, really cool piece, and it's like a piece of art. It really is, right? And the fact that our installers can go and do that kind of thing, it makes them unique. And from our perspective in the office, it's exciting to be involved in that kind of thing. It's interesting.
That sounds like a wonderful project. I'm actually really excited to see the pictures from that.
I will send you the photos.
Heck yeah. In the next video that we do,
yes,
hopefully we'll have the photos.
We'll put the photos up, and you'll be even further in love with flooring.
I love it. I love to hear it. So there are multiple stages to the flooring process. There's the planning, the materials, acquiring. Do you have a more specific word than that?
Yeah, like buying.
Buying the materials. There you go. Procuring the materials,
Yeah.
installing the materials.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important part when you're working with a client? Like what matters most to them? The planning, the buying the materials, or the installment?
I think all of it. I think what's important to them is what they see. And so they want the material to be there when they're ready for it to be installed. And so if we're a duck with, you know, sort of quiet on the top and our feet paddling under the surface frantically to get it there for Monday when it needs to be there, I think that's less important about how it gets there. It's important that it gets there. And then the installation piece, I think, is probably the most important thing because that ties into schedule, that ties into quality, that ties into callbacks. And for the most part, for our clients, that's the thing that's most going to be a reputational item for them. So if they take on a project and we as a flooring contractor fail them because we do a poor job of installation or we can't meet the schedule impact or the schedule expectations, that's going to have a major negative impact on the way that their job is perceived overall. In particular, as a finishing contractor, we're coming in towards the end of a job. And so they may have had a great job that's gone on for 6 months or a year, and then we come in for the last 2 months. And if that doesn't go well, you very much have the possibility of leaving a bad taste in the mouth of whoever their end user is and their customer. So we understand that it becomes a pretty high leverage moment for them. And I would say that piece is by far the most important. I mean, it's all important, but that's the thing that they're going to see and that's going to impact them the most.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how chaotic the job was coming together. It matters, was it done right?
Was it done right? Was it done on time? And did your customer, your client, not only if it's a contractor, our general contractor, but ultimately the end user of that project, get what they wanted, right? And, you know, we see lots of times in our industry where something gets specified by a designer because that's what the owner or the end user has wanted, and then things get swapped out for cost or for time frame or timelines or availability or whatever. And that's fine, and we're happy to do that work and try to create value for a project where it needs to be created. But if you're giving something to someone that isn't what they asked for, you ordered a car and it's supposed to be red and it shows up blue, you know, ultimately you're going to be disappointed.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Now, I know in the early 2020s, there was some issues with reliable access to materials.
Yeah.
Wood got super expensive. Supply chains were disrupted. Did you still see some of those lingering effects in 2025?
Yeah, to an extent, for sure. I think the big story for us in 2025 was the tariff thing that happened between Canada and the U.S. as it relates to logistics. There's no question that global logistics became very sort of snarled in 2020, and that changed the way that our products get to us, for sure. But the threat of tariffs and then ultimately the tariffs had, I would say, in 2025, a larger impact. Not knowing whether it was going to be applied or not applied, trying to quote projects, not knowing whether there'd be tariffs or not be tariffs. having work on our books that we're under contract for with products that are potentially subject to tariffs and trying to decide, do we order this material 4 or 5 months before we need it to try to avoid a potential 25%. I mean, the messaging is so consistent, right, as it relates to tariffs. I mean, everybody knows exactly where it stands at all times. So I don't understand why we had such a tough time with it. But yeah, we did. So we did our best to manage through that and communicate where we could that says, hey, we don't know. This doesn't include tariffs. Here's what we think the tariffs would be. That's sort of all we could do about it.
Do you think when you look at the construction industry as a whole, do you see positive trends? Do you think 2026 is going to be a strong year for the construction industry?
Yeah, I think 2026 will be a strong year. I mean, we judge it in some ways based on what our backlog is, so how much work we have on the books going into next year, we're looking very strong from that standpoint. We judge it based on how much work our estimators are working on in terms of quoting. And then, just having conversations with our clients and other, people in the industry, trying to get a sense of what they're seeing and what they're hearing. And from our perspective, we're looking forward to another good year in 2026.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.